So students, today we are going to study the next chapter, Traders to Rulers. So we have already talked about how the Britishers came here as an East India Company to carry out trade, to make profits, and eventually how they went on to wage wars in Bengal, and the Battle of Plassey that happens, the Battle of Luxor that happens, and how they go on to expand their control over the region, how they gained the Diwani rights, the Nizamat rights after these Battle of Plassey and Buxar, how they installed their puppet rulers there so as to have indirect control over these regions. Now we see that once they make a huge profit from after gaining these Diwani rights, right to collect revenue and all, after the huge profits they make, they eventually start to expand their control over the entire country. So they will come up with new different policies, different ways, strategies, and even waging direct wars to gain control over the different territories, different regions, to expand their control over the country. And we will see how they eventually go on to rule over the entire country. First, we will talk about one such doctrine or the policy they introduced, the doctrine of Paramouncy. This doctrine of Paramouncy, it was started by Lord Warren Hastings. Who was Lord Warren Hastings? He was the Governor General of India from 1772 to 1785. Now, what was this doctrine of Paramouncy? Paramount, as you know, means supreme, the highest one. So, as per to this doctrine, British company declared that they are the supreme authority in India. That is, no Indian ruler, no Indian state is equivalent to their power. They are the supreme power in India, and so they have the power to annex any Indian state, to gain control of any Indian state, so as to protect it from any wars, any invasion, internal chaos. For its own interest, it has the power that it can decide, okay, let me take control of this state. So by this doctrine of Paramouncy, they claimed that they are the supreme authority in India. Remember, this doctrine is very important. Who introduced it? Lord Warren Hastings. Who was he? Governor General. What is this doctrine? British company is simply claiming that it is the supreme authority and has the right to annex any Indian state. Let's see. Who was Lord Dalhousie? He was another Governor General of India from 1848 to 1856. So he comes up with various policies and strategies to gain control over different regions. So the British, they were very shrewd people. They thought at some places we can wage direct wars, defeat them with our superior, they had superior machines, technologies, their army was more trained. So they could easily defeat any Indian state which was so divided. So they said in some regions they directly waged war. There were Anglo-Maratha wars, there were Carnatic wars, there were Anglo-Sikh wars. Various wars happened in which they defeated the rulers, and so they directly gained control over these regions. In some other regions they came up with indirect policies, that they will enter into some treaty with them and gain indirect control over these regions. So let us see what all strategies these people came up with to gain control or to expand their control over India. So Lord Dalhousie, he also followed a number of policies for expansion of British Empire in India. These are the major, you can say, the policies, ways he came up to control these regions. By war in Punjab. So directly he waged war, attacked and gained control over Punjab and Sindh region. We see it was direct war strategy. We attack, we defeat them and gain control. Then another policy that he came up was this Doctrine of Lapse. We will study what was this. So he introduced this new policy, Doctrine of Lapse, and he used this to gain control of these regions of Satara, Jhansi and Nagpur. So if you are asked using what policy was Satara, Jhansi and Nagpur gained control over by the British, it was the Doctrine of Lapse. Then on what grounds did he annex Awadh? Awadh is the current Uttar Pradesh region that was then known as Awadh. So annexation of Awadh was done on the grounds of maladministration. They said the administration is not efficient here, the rulers are not able to manage it. So in this context, we are going to take control of it for their interest. So we see the different strategies Lord Dalhousie came up with to gain control over different regions. Punjab was conquered directly by war, Satara, Jhansi, Nagpur by using Doctrine of Lapse, Awadh on the grounds of maladministration, or you can say misgovernance on those grounds. He is Lord Dalhousie who comes up with these policies that we are going to study about. So first we will talk about this Doctrine of Lapse. What was this Doctrine of Lapse? It was introduced by Lord Dalhousie. According to this doctrine, if suppose the ruler, we see that India was then divided into small kingdoms where there would be native Indian rulers. So if suppose the ruler he died without having a natural male heir or successor, that is he died without having a son of his own, now who will take care of the kingdom? Because this was the general rule, if the king dies then his eldest most son, he takes up the throne after him. But in case the king has died and he has only daughters, suppose he does not have a male son, so what would happen? Earlier what would happen is the king would either adopt a person from the royal family, only from cousins or say son of his brother and so on, and make him the ruler. He was adopted and then declared to be the successor of the king. But now the Britishers came up with this policy, this Doctrine of Lapse. They said if the ruler of a kingdom he died without having a natural successor, male successor, then his territory will not go to his adopted son, but it will directly go to the British control. The state will not be under the adopted heir or successor, which was the tradition earlier, but now it was to be annexed by the British territories. So they came up with these policies. If any Indian state ruler is dying without a natural successor, his state would not go to the adopted son, it will directly come under the control of the Britishers. So this was the Doctrine of Lapse. Now using this doctrine, the British gained control over the regions of Satara in 1848, Jhansi and Nagpur in 1854. So they used this Doctrine of Lapse to gain control over these important regions. Now, Jhansi and Nagpur were very important because of the economic importance that held. They were very profitable regions. Why? Because of the abundance of cotton in these lands. So there was cotton cultivation in Jhansi and Nagpur happening, which were of very important value. When exported, they would fetch a lot of money amount to them. So that is why they were economically very important. So British thought how to gain control over them. So they applied this doctrine over there, these regions. Then we see that the title and the pensions that were given to ex-rulers. So there was this policy that the former rulers who had ruled over these regions, they were allowed to have the titles of king to be used by them, and pensions were being given to them. But this system was also abolished by Dalhousie. He said now no more titles are to be maintained by the ex-rulers and no more pensions are to be given to them. Now it was also a huge blow to the prestige of the rulers, and this was an indirect way of putting an end to the rule of the Indian rulers and indirectly, having the control of the British over those regions. These are the regions that you can see that were conquered using this Doctrine of Lapse. This was Jhansi, Nagpur, Satara, in fact this Sambalpur, Udaipur, Jaipur, they were also annexed using this Doctrine of Lapse by the who introduced this Doctrine of Lapse? It was used by Lord Dalhousie to annex these region of Jhansi, Nagpur, Satara especially. Another system introduced, Subsidiary Alliance. It was introduced by Lord Wellesley. Now what was this system? As per to this system, the rulers of Indian princely states, that is the Indian native rulers, they can continue to reign with an assurance of British in terms of conflict. That is to say, there were various regions where British attacked and defeated the rulers because of the superior army and navy that the Britishers had. They could easily defeat the native rulers. So they defeated them, and then they offered them that okay, we are not going to directly control over your region. You can enter into a treaty with us, into agreement with us, which was known as Subsidiary Alliance. As per to this, they said that you need to follow certain terms of our. In return, we will allow you protection. That is, we will protect you from invasion from by any other kingdom, or if there is any revolt in your own region, or we will ensure that there will be no more attacks on your kingdom, and you can go on to rule peacefully. But there are certain conditions which you will have to agree with. They can continue to be the rulers, they can continue to reign, and they were given British that in times of conflict, that is in case there is any internal revolt or invasion or attack by any other kingdom, in that case British would provide them protection, but they will have to sign this agreement and agree with certain rules, terms and conditions which are stated in that agreement. Now, what were those terms and conditions? Britishers said that the Indian kingdoms, the rulers, they will have to maintain a certain number of British troops. That is, Britishers said, we will provide you with soldiers and army. They will stay in your kingdom. In return, you will provide them place to stay and sleep, and also provide them with food and salary. So salary will be given by the Indian rulers of the native state. In return, the Britishers will provide them with army, so that they can provide them protection, that there is no attack by any other foreign power. They will protect you. I'm providing you with the soldiers, with the troops, but you have to maintain them, give them salary, food and housing. This you have to take care. This was one condition. Then the other condition was that a British resident would be posted in the Indian courts. Now, these Indian native rulers, they had their own royal court. As you are aware, the kings at that time, they had their own court. So there a British resident would be posted. A British resident would be allowed to stay in the royal palace, would be allowed to attend the court, would be a part of it. He should be given royal, good treatment and all. He should be well taken care of. And another term said that the king could not approach any foreigner. The king cannot come into contact with any other foreigner. At that time, these French and Dutch people were also coming for trade purposes. So he said that you cannot go and have any contact with these foreigners, French and the Dutch, and form any alliance against us. In case you want to come into contact with them or come into an agreement, you will first have to take the permission of the British resident who will be staying in your court. So in a way, British said that one of our members will be staying with you. He will be keeping an eye on your policies, and for any other external policy that you are coming up, you will have to take the permission of ours, that is the British resident. So the Britishers had indirectly the entire control. They had their army in the state of these Indian native rulers, whose expense will be met by the Indian rulers. British will be deciding the foreign policies of these rulers. So they were in a way controlling everything. Only the Indian ruler was just for the name's sake the ruler of that region. So we see that this way indirect control had been acquired by the British over certain regions. States like Mysore, Hyderabad, Awadh, Marathas and the Rajput kingdoms, they were forced to accept this alliance after they were defeated in the regional wars. So we saw that many previous regional wars happened where these people were defeated. Then they were forced, okay, you enter into this alliance with us and you need to accept these terms, and we will let you rule in your region. So this is the Subsidiary Alliance. These points are very important, and you need to know who introduced it, Lord Wellesley. And we are studying this in context of Awadh, that this Subsidiary Alliance was imposed on Awadh as well. And later on, they go on to, Lord Dalhousie goes on to conquer Awadh, saying that it is not being administered well by the native rulers. He is Lord Wellesley. He is the one who has introduced this Subsidiary Alliance and got control over so many regions of Hyderabad, Marathas, Rajput kingdoms and Awadh.